big swings.
Well, here it comes. Oh, my goodness. Oh, wow! In your life have you seen anything like that?
Big moments.
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer.
All the news, all the views.
The career Grand Slam belongs to Corey Webb.
Welcome to the PGA Golf Club.
And welcome to another edition of the PGA Golf Club. It's a big one coming up because so much is happening in the world of golf here in Australia. Obviously with the Australian Open finishing up yesterday, and it is President's Cup week as well. So there's plenty to talk about this morning. There is no doubt about that, as Brendon Goddard joins me, as he always does on a Monday. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Do you enjoy just sitting on the couch watching the golf yesterday?
Oh, I did. The kids were actually out with my mum and sister, so I had a bit of free time to sit down and enjoy some live golf and watch the finish. So, yeah, it was quite relaxing.
We'll hear from Matt Jones a little bit later on, and we're going to catch up with Aaron Pike as well, who was able to get a spot into the Open Championship because of how high he finished, and he did incredibly well under pressure towards the end. But have you played the Australian Golf Club before? Have you been there and felt it all? It's a great golf course. I was really surprised when I went up there and saw it for the first time, how good it was.
Yeah, you haven't played it though. You've only seen
I haven't played it.
Yeah.
I've walked it for work, but not to play.
Yeah, it's I'd seen it, but until I played it, it's pretty forgiving in a way. Like you can stand up there with driver and kind of smash it everywhere. Rough isn't very thick. As I said, it's very, as we're talking, it's very American. Like you can see the bright white sand. It's obviously in great condition. The boys were talking about how good a condition it was. So, bunkers left and right in driving areas, but kind of you saw from the leaderboard there was a number of guys. It wasn't just the bombers that were competing. I think there was a number of guys that play golf differently that all were contending at some point or playing well. So, in terms of a tournament too, it's a great tournament golf course. So, as a atmosphere, you've got that around the clubhouse, a few of those greens that are in bowls where the crowd can sit up on the hill and enjoy kind of 3 or 4 greens coming up around the clubhouse and stay in that one particular area. So as a tournament golf course, it's pretty impressive. Yeah,
absolutely. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. As I said, Aaron Pike will be our special guest from the Australian Open, and we'll hear also from Matt Jones post winning yesterday. It was a dramatic finish in the end when it looked like it was going to be a fairly comfortable victory for most of the Sunday. But we've also got our third host today is Nick Bielawski from the PGA here in Australia. Nick, thanks very much for being part of our program.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you've got to introduce yourself to our listeners. The role that you've got at the PGA, and I know that it's a very big time for you particularly, but just a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, well, it's a big time for the whole organisation at the moment. It's obviously really busy with Australian Open, President's Cup and Australian PGA Championship coming up. But my role at the PGA, it's coaching programs manager. I've been in this role for 7 years. I was coaching for the PGA as a teaching professional for 3 years prior to that. So it's pretty multifaceted. Some weeks I'll be on the lesson tee, 30, 35 hours a week, and other weeks I'm stuck in the office doing administration work. So we've got a number of programs that we run. We've got a PGA Centre for Learning and Performance, which is based at the Sandhurst Club in Melbourne. So there's a lot in there that keeps me busy. Absolutely.
Now, we're going to talk more about this after we've spoken to Ian Baker Finch, who's going to be a special guest with us shortly because the President's Cup is on our doorstep. But just a little bit about the First Tee initiative that's going to be launched in the next couple of days and what it all means.
Yeah, so it's really exciting. So first of all, we have to thank Citi and the PGA Tour for setting this up for us. So earlier this year, we were approached by Citi and the PGA Tour to do something regarding the President's Cup in terms of leaving a legacy in the country. So rather than just a regular sponsorship where money just gets dumped into the tournament, we're just trying something a little bit different here.
Okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit more because I think it's a really interesting initiative, but it's also an interesting discussion about the development of young golfers, but not just young golfers, but young people. And I think the way golf sort of, it's one of those sports that it's all about respect. unless maybe you're Patrick Reed.
Respect, integrity.
But it is about respect and integrity and looking up to your elders and playing by the rules and all those sorts of things that not only are good golf lessons, but they're good life lessons. And I think this is sort of part of what you're doing at the moment now.
Oh, absolutely. Golf's one of those great sports, isn't it? In that a lot of the values and the ethics and the morals that we value as people, they're kind of embedded into the sport. So just by being around a golf club and mingling with members, it just helps to build a really good quality person.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we'll get back to that shortly, but our special guest this morning has been part of our show a few times. Almost got to put him on a retainer, is Ian Baker Finch, because it is President's Cup week, and Ian Baker Finch has got a bit of a different role this week than normally is the case. We'll find out a little bit now as we speak to him. And a very good morning to you.
Great to be with you guys.
Now, we've been talking about this for quite some time. Now the moment has arrived. Are the excitement levels at fever pitch?
Yeah, well, I think everyone in Australia is looking forward to it. We've had a fantastic build-up. The Australian Open last week was a huge success, and a lot of the international team played extremely well. So they're coming in good form.
Now, you've got an interesting week because I heard you talking about this a couple of weeks ago for the media day where you're not going to be part of the commentary team. You actually just want to soak it all up and be part of the whole week. Explain the rationale behind that and what you might be doing.
Well, first off, when you do television at a big event like this, I would be stuck away in a little box somewhere or in a booth or a tower all day and really unable to soak any of the atmosphere in, unable to get with the players, unable to see my friends that are visiting to come watch the President's Cup. So I chose not to do that, but to be around and be basically like an ambassador for the week, for the PGA, for Visit Victoria, who's organising so many initiatives down there, just to be around, attend a few lunches, basically shake hands, kiss babies and catch up with friends and be able to go in and visit the players in the players' room occasionally.
What about your role with the players, Finchy? Will that extend kind of any further than just a g'day, like you just alluded to it then, potentially going in the locker room?
Not really any role. I'm not. I've been the assistant captain for Gary Player 3 times, and for Peter Thompson, I was co-captain back in '96, way back then. They have KJ Choi, Mike Weir, Jeff Ogilvie, Trevor Immelman, all assisting Ernie Els, so they've got plenty of help. It's more just to say good day, let them know that I'm around. I'll be at a lot of the functions that the PGA Tour put on for the event. I'm obviously there for them if they need any advice, but I don't think they'll need any advice from an old bloke like me. I think they know exactly what they have to do.
Well, based on the last couple of weeks and what we've seen, how do you feel the international? How do you think they're going to go? And what USA are heavy favourites. Do you think it's changed the last couple of weeks?
The USA is going to be heavily favoured because there's no real home team or home course, if you will, advantage for the international team. I mean, sure, we've got a lot of experience with our captain and assistant captains, having played here thousands of times. They'll be able to coach up the team on how to play Royal Melbourne, which is an intricate, strategic type of course, especially if the greens get extremely hard and fast. So I think we have an advantage in that way that not many of the Americans have played here or know much about it, although Tiger played here back in '98. So although I think on paper the team looks stronger, I think the effort that we'll be putting in and the guys coming in, all of them here a week earlier, which will be a big assistance, rely on the older guys like Adam Scott to be able to show them around as well, lead the team a little bit. I think we're a good chance.
Have you been out to the golf course since the media day? You out there today?
No, I was just out there. Saw you there on media day back on the 18th of November. Have had lots of other things going on with some Legends Tour stuff and the Australian Open this past week. So I'll be down there all week though, and they tell me the greens aren't any faster than they were on media day, but
really?
I'm pretty sure they'll get them to 13 or 14 on the stiff meter.
Finchy, do you think the format's going to favour any team in particular? So, for example, do you think maybe the internationals can claw back a bit of ground maybe in the four balls or the foursomes?
I really don't know about that. We go in sometimes thinking we're going to kick butt in either one of them. I think the Americans are favoured in so much that they have players that have played numerous President's Cups and numerous Ryder Cups. So they have a couple of set teams. Our team is thrown together from 9 nations. They haven't played together very much. The 3 Aussie boys have and Louis have, but the others not as team members as such. So I'm not sure what our teams will be as far as our matchups. You know, I would hope Jason would have been able to play, so we could have had Adam and Jason and Mark and Cameron. They could have been leaders and get the crowd G'd up, send them out first in both formats, you know, get them going. So it'll be interesting to see what the teams will be, and getting to know each other, playing a little bit of foursomes, you know, through the practice rounds for 3 days, get to know each other's game, and then it's all up to the assistant captains and Ernie to you know, do their best in selecting the teams that they think are best.
So, Ian, before we let you go, because I know you're pressed for time this morning, we really appreciate you spending some time with us again on the PGA Golf Club. Just a couple of the players to watch that we don't know a lot about. You follow them virtually every week in America, but just for those that love their golf, maybe a couple of the internationals we don't know a lot about. We know most of the Americans very well because they're such a star-studded field, but maybe a couple of them that watch that might be sort of sleepers through the course of the week.
Sure. Well, I think because I'll start with this, because the Australian fans are so great, sport crazy aficionados of sport and the game. They will be looking forward to seeing their heroes and the stars that they watch every week on TV, and I'm sure they'll be clapping the internationals just that little bit more, but they'll still be clapping the Americans. There won't be any real great Ryder Cup battlefield feel around Royal Melbourne. So that's something that is always so special. I think the Americans come here and they're made to feel so welcome. We know them all so well, the superstars. I think that's something that we have to get our internationals really G'd up and get everyone around them yelling and barracking for them, you know. So the guys that I'll be looking for to take a bit of a leadership role in that, even though he's really young, is Li Hao Tong or Hao Tong Li, depends on how you say it, from China. He's a really, really aggressive young player, and I think he will relish this type of atmosphere, and he will try and get the crowds G'd up. A few of the other younger guys like C.T. Pan and Adam Hadwin and Joachim Neiman, Abraham Answer, I mean, they'll be quiet. They'll just go about doing their job. They're wonderful players. They'll be great to watch, but I don't see them being rah-rahs and trying to get the crowd behind them, you know. So I just hope the Aussie boys play great. Louis will be spectacular. He's playing in fantastic form after second place at the Aussie Open yesterday. So they're the ones. I want the people out there to really get behind the international team. You may not know many of them that well, but they're all tremendous blokes, and they'll make a great team.
Yeah, Scotty's made his intent. But just before you go, one last one.
Yeah, sure.
I have to ask this. Patrick Reed, your thoughts on last week and how he's going to be received here in Melbourne?
I think he'll be received deservedly so poorly. And I think that's our 13th man. The fanatics will be unrelenting. And, you know, I think he will handle that well because he likes to be the victim, and he is tough character in that way. But I don't think the crowds are going to cut him any slack at all. I thought that was, as Mark Leishman said, pretty ordinary what he did last week over there and didn't own up to it. So I think the Aussie fans will let him know that.
Yeah, it was quite extraordinary, and it certainly has been a talking point, unfortunately for the wrong reasons around golf. But we are all focused on the President's Cup, as you said, Ian, off the back of a wonderful performance from Matt Jones, particularly in that back nine as Louis put the pressure on. It was a great start to the summer of golf here, and it only gets better this week with the President's Cup. Thanks very much for your time, as always.
Oh, no worries. Thanks very much for what you do, and enjoy the rest of the show and have a great time at the President's Cup. I'm sure I'll see you down there.
Great to have Ian Baker Finch, part of the PGA Golf Club, again this morning. And, of course, the President's Cup. It is so exciting. It all starts for real on Thursday, but there's going to be plenty of opportunities for everyone to get down there pretty much from today to see the stars in action. So that's the President's Cup. We'll talk about the Australian Open a little bit later on. But, Nick, we want to find out a little bit more about the first tee launch, so we'll do that next on the PGA Golf Club.
Everything you want to know about Aussie golf is in one place. PGA.org.au. This is the official site of the PGA of Australia. It's the one website loaded with all the tournament, course and player news. That includes the latest on the ISPS Hander PGA Tour of Australasia. The Find a PGA Pro directory will track down the pros near you. And here's where you can live stream golf's best on PGA TV, watching tournaments live, streaming replays, or watching the latest reports on Aussie golfers around the world. There are even video tips from the pros. So if golf's your game, this is your site. PGA.org.au from the Professional Golfers Association of Australia. Driving Australian golf since 1911.
Welcome back to the PGA Golf Club. Okay, Nick, this is your time now. This is where we put you under the microscope and talk a little bit more about this First Tee initiative. Tell us a little bit about how it was created. You talked before about linking up with City and also the PGA Tour, but where did it start and your role, I guess, in setting it up as well?
So the First Tee itself, it's been around for a really long time. It's the program's 22 years old, so it's well established in America. Australia is going to be the 6th country that it's in. There's over 150 chapters worldwide, so it's by no means a small operation. So we're very much looking forward in Australia to being that 6th country that's involved in it.
Okay, and I know BJ knows a lot about this initiative because he's going to be part of it all during the course of this week with its launch. But what are we talking about? What age are these young golfers that are getting involved? How did they get involved?
Yeah.
And what do they actually do as part of the initiative?
So we're going to be focusing on 13 to 18-year-olds, mainly secondary school students, and also some youth that are involved in community organisations as well. So people that are in it, they don't have to be an existing golfer. We're using this program to try and reach out to new golfers, and we're really trying to share the sport, the values, the healthy habits that come along with playing golf. And, if we can get some extra golfers out of the program, that'll be great. But we're really about, building and having positive youth development. That's what we're about.
And the golf, is a kind of pathway into helping, which you kind of alluded on, helping people rather than, getting golfers out of it. But it's also about helping people and instilling the right morals, as we touched on earlier. It's not just about golf.
Yeah, so it's kind of a golf skills program, but with a twist to it. So rather than just, the usual full swing, chipping, putting, we're really trying to embed these 9 core values into the lesson plan. So if I give you an example, we might talk about honesty being one of the core values in a lesson.
It's a hot topic.
Whilst it's a hot topic, yeah. So at the beginning of a session, we might just talk to the participants about what honesty actually means to them. And then we'll discuss some ways throughout the session where we can practice being honest. And then as coaches, if we actually see a participant demonstrating and exhibiting honesty, then we'll actually pat them on the back for that. So they're getting praised for their positive efforts. And then, throughout the golf sessions, obviously lots of colour, lots of different activities will be going on. And then basically we'll wrap it up and talk about, we call it a bridge to life. So guys, today we spoke about honesty. How can we practice being honest, not only on the golf course, but in the schoolyard and at home as well?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. How do you get involved? Do you, at the PGA, identify these people? Do you register? Is it done through golf clubs around Australia? How do you actually identify the people and get them into this program? So
it's a bit of a multifaceted approach. So at the moment, we're going through the process of accrediting coaches. So that'll happen basically Q1 of 2020. So if there's any PGA professionals listening to this, feel free to reach out if you want to be involved with the program. As far as participants, we're going to be approaching government schools, secondary schools, and also community organisations. We're going to set up in Victoria, first of all, and then obviously branch out to the other states once we've kind of developed the Victorian market.
Yeah, because we were talking about it earlier about golf and the way it's played, the way the sport is conducted. It's all about taking your cap off when you go into the clubhouse. It's about shaking hands after play. It's about respecting your opponent. It's about tucking your shirt in. It's about a number of different things that aren't only good for golf, but are good for life. It is a sport. I don't think that there's any other one that you could sort of compare it with in that sense.
No, and we unashamedly try and compare ourselves to some of those other sports as well. So, Patrick Reed's obviously a hot topic at the moment. He's copping some flack from competitors, from the golf public. So, in any other sport, feel free to call me out on this, but in any other sport, that might slide a little bit more than what it does in golf, where Patrick Reed at the moment's getting crucified for not behaving so well.
And what about the participants? I know the first tee through the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and these young kids being able to play Pebble Beach, or not only Pebble Beach, but play a US Tour event with pros and celebrities. It's a great initiative, but can these participants then potentially drip feed into that system and tournament in the future?
They can. That's towards the pointy end of the program once someone's been involved for a few years, but that opportunity is going to be open to some of our Australian participants as well. Obviously, we're just launching the program. It's early on, so it'll be great in the next couple of years if we can start to take some people, over to Pebble Beach and fly the Australian flag, so to speak.
Of all the young people that you coach yourself and have seen coming through, are they different to the young people of 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Very different. Very different. So I think a lot of other sports are experiencing this at the moment as well. When I first started coaching, it was okay to have a really honest and direct conversation with somebody. Now you really need to build the relationship and build the rapport with the student before you can lay into them, so to speak. So it's very, very different. I was quite shocked when I first started coaching, how much of a change that was. I was brought up on a culture of discipline and respect, and it has changed a little bit now. Yeah,
because the reason I asked the question is that's society in a way, but whether golf was mirroring the society in a sense, because it is a different sport to a lot of others. But you see, and BJ, you'd see this now, the young golfers coming through, they're all about nutrition and weights and all this sort of stuff, that real professionalism side of things, whereas golf in the past was not so much about those sorts of things. It was about respect and about being mentally strong, and that's how you got your way around a golf course.
Well, the program started 22 years ago, so it's funny how now it's come full circle, and the principles and morals that you're trying to instill in this program are really prevalent in today, and the people you're trying to attract in terms of the Gen Z or Gen Is, as I like to call them, and instill Gen Is. It's all about I.
iPhone,
it's all about
iPad.
me. Correct. So, but the principles you're trying to instill are more prevalent and probably more important now than they probably were 20 years ago.
I think as well, if you strip back all of the the technology advances in golf and people's ability to be able to watch things on YouTube, it still gets back to, somebody needs to be a good person to be able to perform well in the sport. So hopefully this First Tee program helps to, develop, the core values and the healthy habits in golfers, and, who knows, we might be able to develop some talent in years to come.
But I think, Nick, you make a good point in that a good person is always the starting point across every sport. With all the different sports I sort of deal with, they'll always say that if you're a good person and you're approachable, but you're also prepared to listen, then you become more coachable, which means that you are much easier to improve, as opposed to the other way around, where the attitude's not right and they don't listen and then they don't develop because they're not coachable. Yeah,
we have at the PGA Centre, we've got some pretty high-level programs that people, they're paying out of pocket to be involved in the program, but it's still amazing, even though they're paying out of pocket, that they still are not coachable when they get there, and, they might waste, anywhere from 1 to 3 years just from, they're their own worst enemy, so to speak. So you're absolutely right. They need to be a good person at the core, and they need to be coachable to be able to work with them.
What are some of the best ones that you've had come through that you've seen as a youngster that hasn't necessarily gone through this program, but might if it was set up the way it's going to be now, that you were really impressed with as a young person that has gone on and become successful?
I'm not sure if it's anyone who's literally gone on one on tour or anything like that, but you certainly meet some people along the way where you're impressed right from the start, and it's the people that are hungry and they've got a burning desire to be there, and you just know whatever they do, they're just going to be successful when they do it. And first impressions last.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing that you might see a trade in somebody, a month into a coaching relationship, and you just know that they're not going to follow through on things. So, whether it's working on technique or, tactics or nutrition or club fitting or whatever it is, it kind of doesn't matter if they don't have that core self absolutely right from the beginning.
Yeah, that makes absolutely perfect sense. So that will be launched Tuesday of this week, the first tee, and we'll find out a little bit more about that along the way as well. So interesting insights there from Nick. We will take a break. We'll talk about the Australian Open next. Aaron Pike will join us, and don't forget a little bit later on, my favourite time of the week is when we get the lesson from Craig Spence. And I've got some questions for him after my golf, which was horrendous last week. I've taken a step back. Anyway, I'm sure I'll go 2 steps forward after speaking to Craig.
After epiphany and some...
No, it's all under control, but I just need some guidance. So plenty to come still on the PGA Golf Club this week.
Future Golf gets you playing at amazing courses. Future Golf gets you an official golf handicap. Future Golf is the future of golf. It makes you part of Australia's greatest golf community, playing free rounds at partner courses, enjoying lessons, awesome golf events, mini golf and X-Golf. Whether you're a beginner or a golf addict, Future Golf lets you get into the game your way, all from as little as $24.95 a month. And because you're listening to this show, the PGA Golf Club, you'll save 10% on your membership. Just enter the code PGA Podcast as one word when you register. Got that code? PGA Podcast. Head to futuregolf.com.au/join. Future Golf. Play your way.
And welcome back to the PGA Golf Club. We're right in the middle of the action where the big stuff happens when it comes to golf in this country. The Australian Open finished yesterday, and obviously the President's Cup starting this week. And we talked to Ian Baker Finch a little bit earlier on. But yesterday, BJ, it was all about Matt Jones winning his second Australian Open, both times at the Australian Golf Club, of which he's a member which helps. What were your thoughts on that?
Which would have been a heavy favourite. You would have seen the odds.
He was about a 25-1 chance.
Oh, really?
Yeah, going in, I think.
Or one of the favourites, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always easier in hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Considering he's won there before and he knows the course so well. But because the field was so strong, he kind of was under the radar a little bit. But what were your thoughts on what happened in that final round?
Well, Louis obviously made it a golf tournament in the last, or in particular, last hole, and made him kind of a great up and down on 17 to keep his chances going. But Matt Jones was almost unflappable. It looked like he was going to win by 4 or 5 there at one stage, and I said Louis did his best, but that putt on 17 from Matt Jones to close the door, he would have heard the roar from Louis literally 10, 15 seconds earlier, holding out for eagle, or Louis would have, sorry, and then and respond in the best way. So it was pretty impressive in the end. And I think he said afterwards that he thought he had a bit of a buffer and was a bit conservative going down.
Well,
18.
yeah. So what happened was when his tee-shot went into the bunker off the tee.
Yeah, left.
And he was told that Louis had made par on the last, which he meant that he thought he had this amazing
How did he
buffer.
get that wrong? Who told him that?
No, I don't know, but so he was told, and so that was why he went ultra conservative, just to try and knock it out sideways.
Because Mark Allen was obviously there on course. He was suggesting that he should have went out left.
Yeah, correct. So he had all this information that wasn't right. And it wasn't until he got up to the edge of the green where he had to play that great chip. He had to essentially get up and down
to win
outright. Otherwise, he would have been in a playoff. So it was quite a dramatic finish in a lot of ways. But Nick, I'm interested in your views. Matt Jones, he's now a 2-time Australian Open winner. Yet he's got that underrated tag, I reckon, or the under the radar tag, despite what he's done in America now for quite some time.
Mm. Yeah, so I guess it just shows how deep professional golf is. Like Matt Jones is a hell of a player, but obviously when he goes over to America, he's just another player in a really deep field. So he's done really well, winning the Australian Open twice, but obviously it's a step up in class when he goes and plays on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, it's a good point. Louis Oosthuizen.
After his win...
Houston,
was it? Yeah, he kind of struggled thereafter. He had the 2-year exemption, but I think he's kind of just clinging on by the skin of his teeth on the tour after his 2-year exemption. So he's kind of been up and down, but he's clearly capable of winning, and his best is good enough.
Yeah,
just I think closing that gap between his best and worse and finding that consistency.
He'll get some good access back to some higher level PGA Tour tournaments now from that result. So it's
gets
good
WGC events and a few other things.
Right,
obviously the British Open.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's an interesting player because he always seems to be in contention when he comes back.
Yeah.
But I think that's it's a combination of things. Obviously, the fields aren't as strong here as they are in America, but it also shows his ability to step up under pressure when there's only a couple of big tournaments, and it's a different kind of pressure. It's not a money pressure, it's a prestige pressure to win an Australian Open or a PGA. So a different kind of thing kicks in for these guys as opposed to the international visitors that, they've come down to win, but I don't think they're feeling as much as some of the Australians who understand the history of it all.
It'd be immeasurable, I think, playing your home golf course in the Australian Open with the lead for 36 holes with all your mates and your family watching.
Yep.
I can't imagine what he was feeling. So for him to pull through and win it twice on that golf course is amazing.
I'll tell you things I wanted to mention from the Australian Open was Louis Oosthuizen, who, as you said perfectly, made it a golf tournament when it looked like it was just sort of meandering along. To see him play that high-quality golf on a Sunday, you remember those things for years ahead. And that eagle on the last, I mean, that was just breathtaking golf to be able to do that. Almost hold his shot on the par 3, 11th, I think it is as well. He played some quality golf there towards the end to put the pressure on. But also Paul Casey. I just reckon sometimes the international visitors can come and they just, turn up, take their check and go home. But you could actually feel that he understood the prestige of the Australian Open, the culture of Australia. He actually did and said all the right things. And while he wasn't at his best on the Sunday, he was still thereabouts. And it was great to see his name up near the top of the leaderboard. I reckon he's got to get a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, and to come out for the week and to perform so well. And he admittingly didn't have his A game, but you just see the quality and kind of the step up from him and nearly finding a way to win or be in contention come Sunday, and he clearly doesn't have his best golf. And he's talking about the greens, and he was putted poorly because he couldn't get the pace. They were a bit slower than he thought. So, and admittingly, a golf course like that is very American. So it probably does suit those guys more than any other golf course in Australia. So it was great to see that he performed, and not only Louis as well, because there was expectation on Louis coming off the Ned Bank.
He played really well the last
performing
few
so
weeks,
well, nearly winning there. So there was high expectations on those guys, and they delivered.
Considering Adam Scott didn't make the cut, and neither did Sergio Garcia, which was a huge blow to the tournament, at least we had some international stars. I mean, Paul Casey, he's 14th in the world. Louis Oosthuizen, a former British Open winner, and has been playing really well in recent times. It was good that leaderboard was internationalised to a point with some stars, but still an Australian was able to win the Australian Open again.
It was good, and then you had Leash hovering around the mark. Obviously didn't get near it on Sunday, but the young number one ranked amateur in the world.
Yeah, a few amateurs did really well.
So it was kind of, and what a character he was. So there was kind of a bit happening everywhere, which made it kind of interesting come the weekend. So,
absolutely.
And then when you throw in, which we'll touch on later, the 3 British Open spots.
Yes.
It adds a different element to it, and particularly guys coming down the stretch trying to grab on to one of those, knowing they're not going to win, but there's still something to play for.
Well, it's a perfect segue, BJ, because Aaron Pike is about to join us, because he was one that was able to pick up a ticket to the Open Championship next year. But before we speak to Aaron, here is a bit of Matt Jones after his win, a 2-time Australian Open winner now.
It was very calm all week, actually. I was much more nervous in 15 when I won. I was very, very relaxed and calm this week, all week. And today I was unbelievably calm. I put myself in a couple of awkward situations, but my short game, which I do rely on a lot, saved me, and I was able to get it done.
When did you feel the most pressure?
Probably the last hole. I was under an assumption that Louis was on a different score, so I kind of let my guard down and relaxed a little. And then when I saw what the score was, that chip became a little tougher, and but I was able to get up and down.
So that was Matt Jones after winning the Australian Open. Now we've got someone who also was a winner because he's booked his spot to the British Open next year. And I speak of Aaron Pike, who joins us. Aaron, thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you.
What a performance from you, particularly down the stretch in those last 6 or 7 holes to make the birdies you did under that sort of pressure. How proud are you of yourself this morning?
Yeah, you can't do anything but sort of pat yourself on the back, in all honesty. I hit a lot of quality shots yesterday. To be honest, I was hitting them just as good early on in the round, but things weren't sort of going my way, so I just had to keep plugging away, to be brutally honest.
Were you nervous knowing what was at stake? Did you know what was at stake when it comes to getting one of those little Open Championship flags at the end of the round?
Yeah, it's a bit of an indifferent sort of situation because ultimately we're playing golf tournaments because we want to win them. But Jonesy had me covered by a lot, and so then you kind of think, well, can I actually get to him? You got 9 holes to go, and you think, well, the only way I'm getting to him is if he does something wrong. And then in the back of your mind, you're like, well, there's actually British Open spots available, so you're trying to do multiple things. So I kind of had to pull myself back in and just kind of go, mate, let's just hit one shot at a time, see what happens. You're playing well enough, just let it happen if it happens. And yeah, so it was really, like you said before, I'm extremely proud to sort of pull those shots off and do the things that I did.
How had your form been, Pikey? We'd obviously seen each other at a number of tournaments, but how was your form leading in? Were you reasonably confident leading into the week or the start of the week of performing well?
I've been playing really well. Like the golf game as such has been really good. Mentally, not so much. I've been struggling with a lot of things this year. So golf-wise, in terms of hitting the actual golf ball and my coach and everything, he hasn't been happier with it, the way the game is transgressing and going forward. But as you would know as well, playing professionally, sometimes it's not so much as simple as that. So mentally, things haven't been good, and I've also had some injury problems. I had some a strapping on my arm, which you would have seen, but I've just got a tear in a ligament in my right arm. Obviously, it didn't hurt, but so the game itself was very good. It was just getting myself in the right mindset. But if you're not in the right frame of mind to play the National Open, you probably shouldn't be playing the game, to be fair.
So you were conscious of your mental state, kind of?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Friday, I played on Thursday. I played really nice Thursday, really, really nice Thursday, and only had even par, and I was kind of kicking myself for the way that I finished the round and whatever else. And I actually did sort of 15, 20 minutes with Warren Knorr, who works with Jason Scrivener. I used to work with myself years ago, and also used to work with Brett Rumford, Andrew Dote, and he just kind of sat me down for 15, 20 minutes, and he just really levelled everything out for me, told me what we've worked on in past times. He said, mate, the worst thing that can possibly happen is you try and do something that you know that works, and it doesn't work because what you're doing right now isn't working. And I just put everything into place that we've worked on. And in the last 3 days, I just felt like old Darren Pike again, which was great.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Right. Pikey, what's on the horizon for you after the Australian Summer of Golf finishes?
Yeah, well, we got the Australian PGA not this week, the week after. So I'll play that. We finish basically Christmas, and then we don't really have much time off, and then bang, we're straight into the Victorian Open. So I went to Europe. I missed in Europe. Unfortunately, I don't have a card outside of Australia. That ever since I sort of had the back injury, I lost my status overseas and stuff. So the plan is to get overseas again, whether or not what sort of route I take. Whether I go back to China or if I'll head over to the States, maybe do some stuff next year. I'm not 100% certain. So now I've actually got some money in the bank. Got an exemption in the British Open. Hopefully I get into the top 500 so I can maybe do US Open qualifying, just the final qualifying, which makes it a hell of a lot easier. So it does hopefully just opens up a few more doors now.
I'm interested, Aaron, the check, and without sort of being too personal about it all, but the money that jumps into the bank account, how much of a difference does it make for your mindset, for the way you play golf, just your overall disposition when that happens? Because one thing to play golf and to win trophies, it's another thing to be able to do what you did yesterday, just purely and simply from a money perspective. Yeah.
Ultimately, if you've got something behind you, you're not worrying as much. I don't know if you noticed, but the big boys, the Rory McIlroys, the Dustin Johnson, the Jason Days don't really worry about hitting it in the water up the last because they've probably got $100 million in the bank. So
yeah, that's right.
They literally don't care. They just grab another ball out of the bag that they are getting paid to use and they just whack it on the green, which is a great mindset to have. And they probably had that mindset when they were in my situation. That might be a bit of a difference, but it does relieve things. In all honesty, I came here this week having to make money at these next two events to keep my playing rights for 2020. I was sort of maybe sitting 40th, 45th or something on the money list, so I had to keep making money. And I kind of had a moment of clarity in that final round where I realised, I was like, you know what, you're going to make some money. You're going to have a card next year. Let's just let it happen. And it literally did. It literally did. And so I can't imagine what having the dollars behind me now that I've got the exemption, obviously into the British Open I've got. So I've obviously got to let it settle in. But yeah, it's good.
Oh, that's a great insight into life as a professional golfer. So if I push the clock forward to July of next year and to play in an Open Championship, how big a deal is that for you? Are you one that would stay up till all hours every July watching the British Open, dreaming one day that'd be you?
And have you played in any before?
No, I haven't played in a major before, and I've come really close to qualifying for a British Open before. And, to answer the first part of your question, the British Open to me is the biggest tournament in the world. It always has been. It's the original. Even when I didn't really like golf, when I was really young, I always watched the British Open. I don't know why. I just absolutely loved it, and it's always felt like something special to me. So to be playing in it's going to be amazing. I don't typically watch too much golf, but I reckon I haven't missed watching the most part of a British Open for maybe 20 years. So to answer your question, I'm absolutely chuffed to be going, to be fair. So, and to me, it does mean a lot.
Oh, that's awesome. Aaron, congratulations. It was a great story for yesterday. I know that the focus was on Matt Jones and Louis Oosthuizen, but what you were doing, playing with Mark Leishman and just firing so well under the pressure that was at stake, that was brilliant to watch. So congratulations.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
Aaron Pike joining us on the PGA Golf Club.
RSN Podcast, all your favourite RSN shows and loads of new programs. You can listen or download wherever, whenever. And now we're on iHeartRadio, the world's #1 radio and podcast app.
RSN Podcasts on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts and at rsn.net.au. And now on iHeartRadio. It's free at your app store or head to iHeart.com.
It is the PGA Golf Club, and before the end of the program, we do this at the same time every week. We get the privilege of speaking to Craig Spence from the Albert Park driving range. He's not, unfortunately, with us today. He's on the phone, but he's still got a tip that's going to help us be better golfers. Craig, good morning.
Good morning, Adam. Good morning, gents. How are we?
Spence here. You've been in flux with lessons this week, have you? Considering...
Yeah, I have. It's a big week for Melbourne town. It's going to be nice to see golf on the front pages for a week or so, because it is a huge week, and the Albert Park driving range is flying because there's a lot of people in town ready to get into the golf.
I was going to ask you, do you get more lessons over the next couple of weeks because golf is on the television here and the big events are played, that people get motivated that they want to get out there and start playing again?
Yes, I think the weather has a lot to do with it now too, because footy season's died down, and you got a lot of people that get into golf in their off season from football, and the weather's starting to come good. And yeah, you're right. Also, the big tournaments are hitting Australian shores, and golf courses are starting to look really pretty. The grass is growing hard, so. Yeah, definitely a busy time for us at the driving range.
Spence, yeah, it's a bit like the Australian Open tennis, isn't it? Where everyone pulls out the tennis racket and wants to go down to the court for a hit.
It is. It is the. You don't see as many courts around the suburbs anymore, though, do you? But yeah, very similar. Brendon, you probably did the same thing when you were playing your footy. Was as soon as the boots hung up, you got the golf clubs out and got stuck into it.
He was playing more golf when he was still playing.
The golf clubs are well and truly out every week of the year.
Yeah,
I'm not a fair weather golfer.
That's right. Hey, Craig, before we get to your tip this week, which is on putting, I don't want to sort of put you on the spot here, but Nick was talking before about the First Tee initiative around sort of really focusing on golfers in their teenage years, sort of 13 to 18, 13 to 16 sort of thing. When you're teaching golfers, when do you start to see whether they have got it or not? Is there an age? Is it 8? Is it 12? Is it 16? Or is it too hard to be able to identify because everyone is different?
Now, I think one of the great things about golf is that you put a scoreboard. You got a scorecard after every round, And unfortunately, in team events, you could be playing, or team sports, you could be playing great footy or hockey or whatever it is, and potentially not be highlighted because you're playing a different role for your side. But in golf, there's a scorecard, and traditionally the better players have been better at putting scores together right throughout their junior years. Now, there are some kids that have blossomed late. You know, Paul Azinger was famous for not breaking 70, I think, until he was well into his late teens, maybe even sort of 18, 19. And Nick O'Hearn, who we had on the show a couple of weeks back, he also blossomed quite late. And so you can work through that, but traditionally, because the scoreboard's there, you do see the talent right through the mix. They seem to be winning junior events all the way through.
Now, you want to talk about putting because it was one thing that Matt Jones did extremely well under pressure in that final round, whether it be the last putt or the long putt on 17, but there's also a couple of other really important par saves that he made throughout the course of the round, and birdie putts, mind you. But that was your focus about dealing with that pressure, particularly when you've got someone like Louis Oosthuizen breathing down your neck. Yeah, it was interesting that he did just lip in on the left-hand side, and I think his last time he had a similar type thing happened where he just got it in. But he is a great putter. He is a great putter down the stretch, and I thought it might be interesting today to talk about why some guys seem to be able to make those clutch putts. You know, a lot of our listeners, I'm sure, play pennant. Either, you know, our better players would play pennant. Some other players would play match play events in their local clubs, whether it be captain's trophies or things like this. But some players have the knack of holding putts under pressure. Other players have the knack of missing under pressure. I was one of those guys. But no, I wasn't too bad. I had my moments. But I think some of the best things you can do, and I like this, there's a quote from Bob Rotella who said, "I'd rather be decisive than correct." And I think with putting that's very true. Maybe the most important thing is to be decisive. And by that, I guess I mean pick a spot, pick a line, and a feel for the speed, and be decisive about it. Don't sort of second-guess yourself. And sometimes I've watched Phil Mickelson over the years. He'll take 17 different looks at it and discuss it for an hour. I don't know how he does it, but he knocks it in. But you really need to be sharp, decisive, and make a decision. Pick a target, a small target inside the cup. So generally, when we're talking about pressure putts, we are talking about that second or close putt, whether it be a metre, 6 foot, or even a 3-footer. They can really put you under a lot of stress, but focus on a small target inside the cup. It might be a chip out of the paint. It might be a little discoloration. It might be the edge of the hole because you've got a certain breaking putt. But definitely focus your mind as tightly as you can on a small target on the edge of the cup is very important. Don't try to focus too much on your putting stroke when you're under pressure. Typically, it's going to be late in the round, so you should have done enough work. You've had your warm-up. You should have done enough work on your putting stroke. But if you feel like you have to have a little bit of a putting trigger or a feel for your stroke in some way, think about things like the speed of the stroke and the tempo of the stroke, rather than whether or not it's going straight back or inside or outside, or that those things tend to take your mind completely away from what you're trying to do, which is hold the putt. The other things you can think about are, and I think I mention this every week, Adam, is soft hands. What happens when you get a little bit nervous is the putter starts to shake and your hands start to shake a little bit. Now, we are getting into territory where we might be talking about big pennant matches now, or even the club championships, whether it be C grade or B grade or A grade. So once you start to feel the hand shake, everyone's instinct is to sort of try to hold them tighter and hold the putter tighter. But in reality, that's just going to cause a bit of flinching. So you're better off to
soften the hands and just allow the putter to be a little bit wobbly in the hands, because when you make the stroke, everything starts to move anyway. So you just got to trust that you'll make the adjustment you need to make. You'll need to do that constantly too, because you'll find yourself getting having constantly coming back to feeling pressure. Your mind will go on a loop. So you'll need to really keep relaxing yourself over and over again. Use your breathing to help you. Every time you breathe out, you need to try to relax your body more and more. Take a big deep breath in just before you pull the trigger, and as you stroke, you can either breathe out just before you take the stroke away, or some people even breathe out on the through swing. Another tip I got from a guy called Jim Fannin, who was a sports psych in America, who worked with some of the best baseball pitchers in the world. In fact, he worked with Alex Rodriguez and Randy Johnson. He said we carry a lot of tightness in our jaw, and to unhinge your jaw and relax your jaw. So I'm getting pretty deep here today about this pressure thing, but the reality is that we all, when we tense up, we carry that tension in jaws and shoulders and arms and hands, and we need to try to relax all that. So breathe in and out, relax your jaw, and let it all out before you take the putter away.
It was interesting, Craig, just when you were talking about that, something that was said on the coverage yesterday, which I think resonates just with me with what you've just been saying, is that they were saying that you can tell whether a golfer is feeling the pressure or not based on being able to feel the speed of the greens, that they've got that feel. The putts might not be going in, but the speed is right, which means they don't have the tension in the arms, or perhaps even the tension in the mind, because they're getting the feel of the golf course.
Yes, absolutely, Adam. I think if you're really stroking softly and smoothly, then the ball will tend to roll better on the green and tend to control the distance better. I mean, I'd be interested, Nick and Brendon, whether you guys find that when you're under pressure, do you guys find yourself going back to technical thoughts, or do you try to get your mind on the target a little bit more, or on fluid thoughts?
Yeah, I try and go more towards the target. I know one of my weaknesses, if you want to call it that, is under pressure. I tend to dive back into technique way too much, so I need to kind of get out of my body and focus on the target and the process a little bit more. Brendon?
Yeah, I'm more mental, so what I mean by that is, and in a golf sense, I haven't pennant. I've gone to 3 playoffs, so I'm 3-0, so I've got a good record.
Nice.
Just get that in there. But in all honesty,
volunteering that information.
It was all about being in a mindset where I'm gonna win, understanding the situation. So it's humanly impossible. And my example analogy that I use is Tiger Woods. I think 2012. Correct me if I'm wrong. Rocco Media, US Open.
2008, I think it was.
Was it
2008, the broken leg.
Yeah. So he stands up and holds a putt, and Tiger's famous for doing that more than anyone.
And the commentator at the time said, expect anything different when he got it in.
But it's because Tiger had this ability to understand the situation, because it's humanly impossible not for Tiger to think about what this putt or what the putt meant. This is a playoff. This is a putt to get into a playoff for Rocco, but his ability then to go into his process and have the mental toughness to focus on his process, and that's not going to guarantee that you're going to hit the perfect shot or the right shot or hole every putt, but it's going to give yourself the best chance.
But isn't that you also embracing the moment and embracing the pressure?
Correct. So
you've had that in a situation in a grand final where you've had to kick a goal to put your team in front, and you've done it.
We've talked about it before, that not everyone wants to be in that situation.
No, that's
so
right.
there only might be a couple of guys that said, I want to be that guy standing over a 4-footer for the win, or I want to be the guy with the ball in my hands at the end of the game, wanting to have a shot for goal to win it for our team. Like, there's only a handful of guys to do that, but even when you get in that, that's a really good start. But then to have the mental toughness to go through the process, understand the situation, and then clear that of your mind, and then focus on the process. Because then, soon as we know, and Spence is somewhat alluding to, you start focusing on results and all these other little different things, in particular in golf, is that's when you might end up doing it, but the odds of doing it again are less.
So
it's just giving yourself the best chance to perform under pressure.
That last putt that Matt Jones holed wasn't a particularly convincing putt, and Tringali had a similar putt, which obviously didn't have the same pressure, and he firmly put it in the back of the hole, whereas Matt kind of dribbled it down because it was slightly downhill, and it almost leaked left. So it wasn't the most convincing final stroke.
No, and I'll guarantee that he thought of the last putt that he holed to win, which I think was also not overly convincing and just went in. So it's funny how, which kind of is a good segue to my next point, which is negative thoughts. And I think everyone has them. Everyone has the little guy on your shoulder that's saying, don't push it, don't pull it, don't miss it. All these thoughts keep popping into your mind. And I think what I've found over the years is to not try to fight that. You're almost better off to just accept that the negative thoughts will pop into your head throughout the day, but to use them as a trigger to bring yourself back to the process. So almost the way I would have a conversation with myself where, there's that negative thought again. So what am I doing? Okay, I'm bringing my mind back to the target. I'm bringing my mind back to feeling the speed. Because negative thoughts, what they're really doing is distracting you from what you're able to do and what you should be trying to do, which is hold the putt. And they keep coming, like I said before, on a loop. They just keep coming all day. I'll use any chance I can to talk about my Australian Masters victory, Adam, so I'll use it again. That final day for me, I reckon I had 3 million negative thoughts that day that I had to just constantly deal with. And the last part of the day was about a 3.5-footer down the hill. And I think every part of my body was shaking over that. And these things really worked. And I'd spent years working on them. And I can't tell you how much you need to keep focusing on these things to really putt well under pressure.
Spence, is it true that about half of the views on YouTube of that final round of the Masters are actually yours?
Yeah. The other half of my parents.
Oh, your parents, I was going to say, yeah.
That's true. We do sit down together and watch it.
I'll tell you what,
very often.
If I'd won the Masters, I'd be watching it every day over breakfast, and then again after dinner. Don't worry about that. Craig, thanks as always for joining us. Next week when you're in the studio, I just got to take you aside for 5-10 minutes. Just a few things are going on in my game that
Shadow, you're not in here because he wanted to get
I was a bit flat
lesson.
that you weren't in. I need some guidance, but we'll do that next week.
I won't do that to you again. I'll be looking forward to next week, fellas.
Terrific. Craig Spence joining us there on the PGA Golf Club with his tip of the week. And I know it's helping a lot of people. We're getting some really good feedback on Craig's help with us in the world of golf coaching. That's it from us for the week.
Yeah. Well, just on that's the great thing about golf, because everyone can stand over a 10-footer, regardless of your ability, age, anything, and get the feeling of pressure or excitement of holding a 10-footer. Golf's a great equaliser. So it might sound a little bit over the top in terms of dealing with pressure on the golf course for the club golfer, but there'll be hundreds of golfers in club golf, whether they know that I've got this to break par. I had this mental demon where I couldn't break par for the first time years ago, and it just played on my mind as this so much pressure on me to break par for the first time, but that's relevant to someone trying to break 40 points or break the handicap first time. Or
break 80, break 90, break 100.
It's all relevant. So,
I remember when I was trying to break 100 for the first time when I was quite young, and I had a putt from about 4 feet down the hill to hole it, and I missed it. And I reckon it was the first time, if I look back in my life's history, as the first time I got nervous about the consequences of something, and I missed 100. It. I was devastated with myself.
You're still talking about it now.
Yeah, that's right. And believe me, Nick, if you know me well enough, I'll never get over that either. But that's the beauty of golf. There's so many different sort of goals you've got that are all relative to your own ability.
Yeah, and we can all feel, as I said, that pressure of holding a putt to win, whether it's with your mates or it's for some cash. And
yep. Absolutely.
Great cash
I've
games.
seen some of my great mates just completely capitulate over a quick pick or something like that.
So that's why the game's so great.
Absolutely. Nick, thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it. And good luck with it all this week. And I think it's a great initiative, and I know that it works because it has worked overseas, and to be able to link up with the PGA Tour, I think this is a great initiative for the PGA here in Australia.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I just want to say to both of you as well, really appreciate the work that you're doing for the PGA and the PGA professionals. So really can't thank you enough.
No, thank you, Nick. It's
Cheers.
great. We're having a great time. Particularly,
we're not working, mate. We're just talking about a passion.
Right.
No,
PJ
you're
and I
not.
just sit back and get heaps of tips and get to talk to golfers. Life doesn't get much better than that. So, Nick Bielawski, it's your first performance as co-host, and you've done very well. So, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, that's it from us for this week. Enjoy the President's Cup. I'm sure you will, and we'll do it all again next week. We'll catch you then. 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 Again next week. We'll catch